What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 213 of the RRBG podcast. This podcast is a proud member of the Podbelly Network. Go to podbelly.com and check out all the amazing shows we have on our network, including the Sofa King podcast, Robots for Eyes, Art and Jacob Do America. I mean, there's one for everything that you're into. If you're into Magic the Gathering, they got you. If you're into the occult, they got you. You're into serial killers, they got you. Everything. Go to podbelly.com, check out the list, and support the network. What's up, everyone? I'm here again to talk to you guys about Sheath Underwear. The most comfortable underwear I've ever owned in my entire life. You know, back when I was younger, I never really gave a lot of attention to what kind of underwear I was wearing. Sometimes I wouldn't even wear any underwear. But most of the time, it was awful boxers with these terrible patterns on them, all full of holes, bunched up and sweaty, creating this terrible smell. It was the worst. So this one time, I'm in the mosh pit. I get hurt really badly, and the ambulance had to come pick me up and take me to the hospital. My girlfriend at the time was riding in the ambulance with me. Had to take my clothes off to set me up for the hospital, and when they take off my pants, they realize I'm wearing these awful boxers. The dudes start laughing. My girlfriend left me. That's how bad it was. And you know what I was thinking? If I was wearing Sheath underwear back then, none of that would have happened. I would have saved myself years of embarrassment, all this work I put in with this girl. Anyway, go check out Sheath Underwear. Go to sheathunderwear.com. The company was created by a U.S. Army veteran, Robert Patton. While he was out serving, protecting our rights, he discovered that he needed to come up with a better solution for underwear while you're out in a combat situation like that. It has this 2-pouch technology that separates the twig and the berries. It's fantastic. Go to sheathunderwear.com, use our promo code RRBG, and save 20% on your purchase. It's worth every single penny. If you're watching this right now and you're single, it's because you don't have Sheath underwear. This episode is also brought to you by Killcliff. My friends over at Killcliff make the best energy drink you can buy in the market today. Clean energy, none of that crap that they put in Monster or any of those Red Bulls. No sugar, just clean power for all the grind you're going to have to put in today. And if you're not grinding today and you just want to relax, they also have CBD drinks to help you recover from any injuries you may have, any kind of inflammation. Maybe you went a little too hard at the gym. CBD drink will get you right back on track. Go to their website, killcliff.com. Check out all their different flavors. My personal favorite Ignite drink is the Cherry Limeade. And in the CBD category, you have to try the Joe Rogan Special. It's the Flaming Joe Pineapple with Jalapeno. It's not that spicy. You just get a little bit of a kick at the end. It's delicious. Go to killcliff.com and tell them that RRBG sent you. This podcast is also brought to you by El Yucateco Hot Sauce. You know, I gotta tell you, I've been eating a lot more Mexican food these days as I live in LA, and it's just inevitable at this point. So having a really good hot sauce at my disposal is kind of crucial. And my go-to right now is El Yucateco hot sauce. They are a staple. They come in so many different flavors. You can get the verde sauce with jalapenos, or you can get the habanero sauce. They have this special like black sauce, which is a special reserve sauce. I mean, for whatever level Scoville you can handle, I'm sure you can find yourself a sauce here. And if you go to shop El Yucateco, use the promo code RRBG and you'll get 10% off of your purchase. This podcast is also brought to you by Saints Joints. Go to saintsjoints.com and check out all the awesome products they have there, including the new Book of Saints that comes with 4 packs of pre-rolled joints. It's this incredible, lavish, luxurious-looking gold foil stash box. The works. It's the best-looking stash box I've seen. Make sure to go pick one up before they're all gone. And also check out the new hash-infused pre-rolls. Don't forget, it's saintsjoints.com, and make sure you tell them that we sent you. In this episode, I talked to Adam Zuniga. Adam is an advanced Cicerone, also calls himself the Beer Slayer. He is the host of the Six Most Metal Breweries. It's a show that's based on bringing together and to the spotlight breweries that are linked to metal bands. He sent over a box of beer, which includes the KCBC Morbid Hour Black Lager, which is their baby. It's a collaboration beer with the Six Most Metal Breweries. It also includes Hell Lager beer from Wayfinder. We had the Deftones Phantom Bride from Belching Beaver. And we had the Adrioid Theory IPA EBK. It's part of the Knotfest Beer Pit box, which gets sent to your house with 4 of the most metal beers in the craft beer scene. You can sign up. It's a subscription service. They do it every month. I highly recommend it. Really great quality beers, all linked to independent metal bands. I had a blast talking to him. We nerded out about beer. We nerded out about the beer scene, bottle shares, what the parallels are between metal and beer. We talked about the entire project as a whole and their plans for the future. I hope you enjoy the conversation. I hope you sign up and have a beer for yourself. Please check out our Patreon page while you're at it. Go to patreon.com/RRBG. I'm drunk. Thank you, Adam, for getting me drunk. Cheers.
Inside of this hole you create, you hide from yourself. You separate every belief that is true. You spend your life.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the RRBG podcast. I am here with Adam Zuniga of the Six Most Metal Breweries. How you doing, brother?
Hails, Eddie. I feel like we have a lot in common, so it's great to connect.
Yeah, man. I mean, we've been friends, like we said earlier, we've been friends on Facebook for a bit, but you were in my, like, I have different, like, groups of friends. You know, I have my high school friends, and I have my metal band friends or whatever, and then you're in the beer category.
Sure.
You are a Advanced Cicerone, level 3.
Advanced Cicerone, level 3. It's kind of like one half of the bar exam for beer.
Yeah.
Certified beer server is level 1. It's a multiple choice exam online.
That's where
Certified.
I'm at.
Good man. Most metal. Certified Cicerone from there. Level 2 is kind of a written exam, multiple choice exam, tasting exam done in person with the Cicerone program. Advanced Cicerone level 3 is, again, like kind of short essay, multiple choice, tasting, and then getting grilled by the Cicerone program in person about like off flavors and food pairings and what is this beer, that kind of thing. And then level 4 master.
There's only, what,
which I haven't
9 in the world now?
There's only a handful. A lot of them own breweries.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure if and when I want to head in that direction or what the incentive is to do it. The Cicerone program is still a young program, so I don't think they're even certain yet.
Yeah.
They even know what to do with a title like Master Cicerone. But other than bragging rights, you know, we're still kind of all figuring out what the Cicerone program is good for, beer's current place in the modern world, because beer has always been an important part of any world, you know.
You want me to tell you the answer to that question?
Let's hear it.
Free beer.
Free beer.
That's what it's for. You want to become a Master Cicerone, you will now have free beer for the rest of your life, because you're not going to show up to a brewery and be like, what's up? I'm one of 8 in the entire world that know more about beer than you guys. And they're just going to be like, try this one and try that one. And, you know, like, please tell me what you think about this one. We just decided to make a gummy bear vanilla snow cone IPA. Let's try it. Like, oh my
Yeah. Free beer for life.
That's what it is, dude. Look, I did the certified beer server program through Cigar City, and I trained all of the certified Cicerone stuff, and which at the time the advanced didn't exist. It was server, Cicerone, master, and they added the advanced like maybe a few years back. But I trained the whole thing for certified Cicerone. I just didn't have the $600 to, you know what I mean, at the time to take the test. But, you know, Cigar City did a really good job of educating me in that world. Like, I consider that brewery number 1 in my life, not just because their beers are that good or whatever. It's just their mentality, how they handle the education of craft beer. Like, everybody that's in there is in class. That's basically what's going on.
Hell yeah. It's so important to have that brewery and that moment. I think I've been fortunate enough that, you know, I've done sales and marketing for different breweries. I worked for breweries that have really enabled me to pursue the Cicerone certification and the Cicerone education. So they coughed up the $600 or whatever it is to take some of those exams, man. And for me, I mean, it's been a great calling card. Like, it helped me when I was new to beer in New York City. You just kind of like find some footing in that industry, and it's become a calling card for the Six Most Metal Breweries and everything we've done around it, just to say, you know, this is not, I mean, this is always entertaining, but it's always educational. Correct. You know, we have some reference and some foundation for what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a hard thing to convince people too. Like old family members, I'm like, so what are you doing? I'm like, I'm teaching people about beer. They're like, why? I'm like, 'cause I like beer.
Yeah.
And then I want to drink it. And they're like, okay, alcoholic. Like,
Yeah.
like it's not
Professional
that.
alcoholic.
I'm professional. I know how much water I need to drink. You know, I know how clean my glass needs to be. Like, get out of my face. But
Yeah.
I love the experience of getting into the roots of craft beer as a scene, as a whole. And I mean, that's where the podcast started. It was mostly about bands and breweries coming together. Like the first few episodes, that's all it is. It's a musician and a brewer, you know, and been fortunate to have like, you know, Garrett Oliver on here and stuff. Like it's been great. So I love everything about the scene, and I was, you know, neck deep in it until I moved to LA. The scene out here kind of put me off a little bit. It was more about the hype. It wasn't about the liquid. It was about the hype. It's about like, hey, what's the newest can label that's coming out this week? I'm like, that's not, you know, labels are cool. I love labels, but the beer better be fucking good too, man. You know what I mean?
Much agreed.
Let's open a beer, you know, and then keep talking. What do you want to start with?
I think I'm going to start with Morbid Hour Black Pilsner, just because it's my baby, it's my beer. I'll begin with that. Then we'll do Hell as a palate cleanser and move on to the IPAs.
Yeah, I'm going to let my listeners know. Like, you thank you so much. You hooked it up. You sent a box of the Knotfest Beer Pit box, which is explain that for the listeners while we crack this open.
So, I originally connected with 5B Artisan Management at KCBC, Kings County Brewers Collective, who made this beer, because they collaborated with KCBC on the Behemoth beer, Wolf of Siberia IPA.
Tremendous IPA, by the way. I loved it.
Yeah. We talked about them representing the 6 Most Metal Breweries, and nothing ever came of it. But it just goes to show you never know how this stuff is going to come back around, because recently, with the onset of coronavirus, you know, live music has been in a similar situation as beer. It's a very social industry. So it's like, how do we keep this conversation moving forward? They were looking for ways to not just monetize their artists, but hustle for their artists, continue communicating with all their fans.
Giving them a job.
Exactly. And so they had the idea of launching a direct-to-consumer beer pit. You know, one of the good things, the silver linings about the last year, is that traditional distribution has kind of fallen, and everyone's been getting crafty about, well, how do they get their goods? How do they get their alcohol to market? Like, what do we do when we can't have people in bars or in our tap rooms anymore? So it's become more lax with people mailing beer across the country. And 5B wanted to do that, bring in a Cicerone for kind of like quality control. I had a lot of established relationships with the breweries that are featured in each box, and then kind of give it their most metal blessing and branding with Knotfest, which is of course even bigger than Slipknot. It's become this like kind of
it's its own thing,
multicultural phenomenon, you know?
Yeah, it's its own thing now.
So they said, take this, lead it, choose the breweries, we'll box it up. I get it all to like New Jersey, the central hub, through a retailer called Roselle Park Wine and Spirits. And from there, they ship to about 30 states and counting, and that'll soon include other countries as well. So it's all DIY. It is all DTC. It's a box of heavy metal beer delivered directly to your door.
It's amazing. Cheers, brother. Thank you for sending it to me.
Cheers, my friend. Happy to.
Black lager.
Black lager. Black Pilsner.
Black Pilsner. Sorry, Black Pilsner. Oh, I like it. I like it a lot. It's drinkable.
Yeah, we made this in collaboration with St. Vitus Bar.
Amazing. I love those guys.
Yeah. You know, we wanted a beer that suited their taste. We wanted a beer that suited the dark interior of St. Vitus. We named it after their happy hour, which is, of course, Morbid Hour. And we wanted to be sessionable for a show. 4.666% alcohol.
4.666. It's right.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
So you can drink a lot of them over the course of like a Doom set or something,
sure,
you know? So we really tried to summon the devil with this beer, and also show that metal beers, you know, when I say that's metal, I mean, what I mean first and foremost is a commitment to quality. But we also wanted to show metal beers don't have to be like big and boozy. They can be, and that's part of the fun of it.
Yeah.
But that they can also be smaller, drinkable, sessionable, refreshing beers, and still like with the same kind of aggressive aesthetic and attitude you'll find in metal beers across the board. So this is our baby.
Oh yeah, man, it's really good. Like you were explaining, it's super drinkable, which I love the taste of stout. But when I am out, I can't I can't be chugging 6 or 7 stouts because the night's over before you know it. So this is a lot easier to drink. One of the biggest problems I get with stouts and porters is the sticky mouthfeel, and it doesn't seem to be there right now.
No, I mean, this is lagered and cold conditioned over at least, I think, about a month or 6 weeks before they release it. And that just kind of lightens the body. It refines the character. There's no residual sugar, no like kind of cloying malt sweetness like you're talking about getting in bigger porters or stouts. It has that roasted quality because, again, like the roasted malt is there giving it the color. There's notes of like chocolate and coffee, but it's not going to beat you over the head. It's not cloying. It's equally refreshing. So if you drink this on a hot day, immediate satisfaction. If you want to let it warm up a little bit and like sit and savor it, it works as well, man. Yeah. It's great with food. It really is an all-purpose, all-day kind of beer.
Yeah, and
and all night.
the key is selling it to people that are scared of dark beers. That's something I always stumbled on at beer festivals when I was doing like GABF or extreme beer. I'm like, you need to try this beer, and I pour it, and they're like, no. I'm like, yeah, don't worry, just try it.
It's misleading, right? I think.
Yeah, it's really dark. So if you look at it, you think it's like a Rasputin or something, you know what I mean? But it's
totally.
But it's not.
Totally. Yeah. Beer is colorblind. Beer is a colorblind world. Beer does not discriminate. I don't know exactly where it started. I think it is just the association with stout, with porter and stout, and then like imperial stout, that dark beer means heavier or dark beer means more alcoholic. Dark beer is only an indication of flavor, of roasted malt, but it is no indication of alcohol. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bigger, heavier beer. It certainly can be, but Morbid Hours, like I said, really light and surprising in that respect.
Yeah, it's almost similar to like a Guinness, where a Guinness is a little more watered down here in the States, but it's easy to drink, you know what I mean, and dark. Like Guinness is easy to drink and dark, but I think it's a little too easy to drink.
Yeah. It's a great point. Guinness, I mean, other than kind of being so like nitrogenated up, it's only like it's like a 4-ish% beer. It's like a 4.5% beer. Guinness is actually lighter than Budweiser, and it's incredibly dry in the body. So like you said, dark beer is really no indication necessarily of strength, maybe of flavor, maybe of the malt that went into it, but you can lager it and make a light beer out of it easily.
For sure. Yeah. This is like the craft beer version of Guinness, I would call it.
There.
Yeah. It's funny. I fell into that super elitist, nerdy beer guy for a couple years, which I tried to, now that I'm out of the industry, I realize it, and I'm like, I shouldn't be a little more open-minded, but man, would I like complain about shit all the time.
I think we all kind of go through that phase, right? Because it's like your local band or your local sports team or whatever, man. You take a lot of pride in your beer, and everyone's trying to get to like the best of it, and there's no shortage of it right now, so there's a lot of competition in the market. So it's not only like what is local, but then the question of like what is craft, and it's easy to nerd out on and geek out on and maybe like lose sight of quality first and foremost.
Do you still drink stuff that's non-crafty? Like most brewers that I know love themselves a good old Coors Banquet.
I know they do, or whatever it is. Everyone kind of has that one beer.
Yeah.
To be completely honest, I do not, man. Just because I don't have to. Like, I think beer happened to me like when there was so much variety in the market. There is so much available. There are so many craft breweries out there. Like now there's over 7,000 and counting. But I mean, for what you like, whether it's light beer, piss beer, nostalgic beer, like old school, whatever you want to call it, man, there is always like a craft equivalent out there. And, I always kind of was partial to something like Negro Modelo, for example.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I still respect. But again, that is an amber lager. We don't have any idea now what like Negro Modelo originally tasted like, but something like Morbid Hour kind of approximates that. So I don't really have that one guilty pleasure, but at the same time, man, I'm no longer after the hype that you mentioned earlier. I could care less about like the name breweries that release a different IPA every single week that somehow always tastes the same, or a pastry stout with so many ingredients like you can't even tell what's what. You said it, not me. But every city, like New York has one, man. Every city kind of has
other
that brewery.
half. I mean, even though
model.
I've had Matt from Other Half on here, but they're that brewery out there. They're the ones that everybody lines up for. And I mean, they make quality beers. Like, I'm not shitting on Other Half at all. They make incredible beers, but they are the brewery that people would line up for out around the block. You know, every single can release.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
Yeah.
And I use. I mean, I'm being. You know, I'm going back to my roots of the hater with Monkish. Like, I've been to Monkish a ton of times. I love them. I take friends there whenever they're in town. Like, it's fine. It's just, you know, I hate the lining up for a can release aspect of it. You know.
I do too. It's so funny. Like, I was just looking earlier. I don't know if you know Trappist, Chris Dodge, his band, which is all like beer themed, beer core music.
Yeah.
They've got a great like 3-part song called "Waiting in Line," which just fucking rips a new asshole to the people that do it. But I agree. I think line culture, double IPA, everything, pastry stout, everything. It's kind of turning craft beer into an absurdity, and it's kind of turning new consumers off, which is why you've seen this rise in every possible canned alternative to beer, this rise in every fucking like hard seltzer flavor out there, because these are the first impressions. Like, those breweries that have all that hype surrounding them, they're giving the impression that this is what craft beer is. So wait in line or don't, you know, and I guess I don't, honestly.
No, I'm with you, man. And, you know, I used to shit on the rise of seltzer, but it's weeding out the people that don't really care about craft beer from the craft beer scene. Because I've always noticed that, like, you know, I spent 8 years in the scene, man, and I saw the rise of the people that, you don't like beer. Stop it. You think you do, but you actually like cocktails, and you actually like daiquiris, and you like, you know, foo-foo, like, you know, wine coolers. You're not into beer. So they were like morphing the beer scene into that. And I'm like, no, just go away. Have your own scene. Go. Yeah. So at first I used to hate seltzer. I'm like, what is this crap? But now I'm like, yes. Have your seltzer scene. Go have fun. Get out of the craft beer party.
That's, you know what, that's a much better, like, positive way to look at it, man. Like I say, it's great. I think we've lived parallel paths, man. Yeah. And I followed RBG for a while. I didn't know that it originally stood for Rock and Roll Beer Guide. I think that is fucking metal.
It was the cheesiest thing I had ever heard. My friend my friend came up with it. I was like, that is so cheesy that it will work. Let's do it.
I love it, man. Yeah. I've always thought, like first and foremost, music podcast, metal podcast. I'm honored to follow in the footsteps of Corpse Grinder to Careen Around recently, man. I always thought it was first and foremost a music podcast, but it's great that the roots of this are in craft beer, and you've had that moment with like bands and breweries that you saw where it crosses over. I mean, like Cigar City is phenomenal, man, and I think they still make the guar beer.
They do. They do.
Like the annual guar beer for the barbecue.
I mean, I don't know if you know this, but it was during my time there, I created the Killswitch beer. Killswitch.
Oh, no shit.
Alive or Just Brewing. That's my baby. I actually have a bottle of it back there somewhere. I'll actually, you know what? I can bring it to show you. Hold on.
Bring it to the forefront. Now, what do you all want to talk about?
So here's the Killswitch Engage. Alive or Just Brewing from Cigar City. Which
that's excellent.
Yeah, it was like 3 emails between Adam and I talking about, like, what do you want it to taste like? The first email was, I want to make it Boston-ish. So how about pine needles and cranberries? And I'm like, no.
Is that what Boston-ish means?
I guess. I was like, no, dude. No, I mean, he's a big fan of like super piney IPAs, very resiny, like stone level, teeth enamel burning kind of. Yeah. So we he suggested pine needles. I'm like, that's cool. No one's really kind of done that, but maybe that's for a reason. So we ended up just doing like a double IPA for this, which was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that was the origins, and I've always, and by the way, for anybody that's listening and watching, like, it's coming back, like, not the Rock and Roll Beer Guy name, but I'm working on some stuff. We'll have some announcements soon. I think maybe by the time I put this out, I can say that you'll know what's going on pretty soon.
Most Metal, man. Does that mean, so are you from Florida originally, and that's how you landed at Cigar City and then made your way west?
So I'll give you a quick rundown of the story, just because it's not about me, it's about you. I'm gonna go ahead and, by the way, before I start this, second beer, you want to do the lager?
Let's go to hell.
Let's go to hell. Got the hell from Wayfinder. Love Wayfinder. Really metal brewery. They collaborate with a lot of great bands. I know they did a Russian Circles beer not too long ago.
Russian Circles beer, which was also a black pilsner, so clearly the style is catching on.
Yeah.
Most recently a Mastodon beer, and I hear they're working on a Red Fang beer.
Yeah, those guys are great. And I know, shout out to our boy Barnaby. Rest in power, my friend.
Let's put 1 or 2 or 6 back for Barnaby.
Man, that guy is the reason I exist. He was the most metal beer guy. Like, that was the dude.
We all owe Barnaby, like I said, 1 or 2 or 6. So everyone knows who we're talking about. Barnaby Struve was one of the founders at Three Floyds, a true beer and metal original, a craft beer and heavy metal hobo. And he was really the one who began bringing like bands together with Three Floyds for collaborations. And we interviewed him at Decibel Metal and Beer Fest. And I'll never forget, like, you could almost see he was always the gentleman and always the madman, and you could almost see the frustration in him because he really wanted to say, like, metalheads, metal people sometimes get such a bad rap, man, like, just for being like stupid, or if it's the music for like the last bastion of just teenage boys that refuse to grow up or something. And you just could hear saying, no, metal people are thinking people. They are passionate about their music. They're passionate about their beer. They're passionate about their food, and they expect the best from it. So as much fun as it is throwing the horns and sticking out tongues and like your teeth and everything, man, it was great to hear someone like Barnaby, who started it all, speak so passionately and so eloquently to beer and metal hand in hand. So yeah, here's the Barn.
It's a barn, man. Ooh, cheers. Oh, that's good. That is so good. I've been, I've definitely gone the gambit of, let's see how extreme beer can get, to now I'm like, good lager is all I need.
Yeah. I think lager has to be the most metal style out there. I mean, again, it's among the hardest to execute. It does take like time and precision, man.
Yeah, and that's one that people don't get that. People think that lager means cheap beer, or because they associate it to Budweiser. They're like, oh, that's whatever beer. And I'm like, no, man, it takes longer to make. It ferments for longer. It's harder to do. It's hard to do it right.
Totally. I mean, we can thank like just decades of industrial brewing for that, and a lot of small breweries don't have the capacity or the time or like just the real estate, the tank space to like. Yeah,
because those tanks got to go on their side.
They can, yeah. But fuck, like, it's great that like Wayfinder is out there, and like I think half the beers they release are lagers. They're co-owned by Relapse Records. They're related to Sizzle Pie. I mean, I would hands down say they're among the most metal breweries in America. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the half of their production is all lagers really speaks to like current tastes.
Hell yeah. You got proper glassware. You got the Wayfinder mug.
They know that I am a sucker for dimple mugs, so they sent this to me along with the cans to taste with their head brewer, Kevin Davian, when we did the interview for the Knotfest Beer Pit. When people sign up for the Beer Pit, you get a link to interviews and tastings with all the brewers, which is really cool.
That's awesome. I love dimple mugs, but I think I exclusively use them when I'm either at a German food place that's selling some German lager, like straight up Hofbrau or Weihenstephaner, or during Oktoberfest, I'll pull one out and I'll drink everything out of that during that week.
I think it's all about the optics, the ritual, and the tradition and the novelty of it.
For sure. No, I love them. I'm being lazy. I only have one glass, which is this awesome Cosmic Eye Brewing, another metal brewery. They sent me this.
Again, not only do I think we have a lot in common, I think we have a lot of friends in common. That's so great that you know Sam and Michelle from Cosmic Eye.
Oh, yeah. Sam is a good friend. Sam was on episode 4 of the podcast with
that early.
Sasha. Yeah, early on with Sasha from Intronaut. I met him because he was delivering beers to Intronaut at live shows. He would show up with a little corny keg, like, "Hey," I'm like, "Who are you?" That's awesome. And he was working for Nebraska Brewing Company at the time, and then eventually, opened up his own Cosmic Eye beer, which is fantastic. And keep an eye out for those announcements I was talking about earlier.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
But anyway, it's this beer is fantastic. What was I going to go into earlier about me?
Tell us about the road from Florida to LA.
So
Cigar City to RRBG.
Okay, well, I'm from New Jersey, but New Jersey ended up being Miami at about age 15, and then I spent from 25 years in Miami. I moved to LA about 5 years ago, so I don't know. The math is somewhere in there, but I spent about 20-something years in Miami, and 8 of those were in the beer industry. And it was funny because the way it started was I took my wife out to dinner, and I had just gotten into craft beer by virtue of being on tour with the band. Because Florida at the time didn't really have a lot of craft beer. You couldn't, I think, like the most you could find was like Monk in the Trunk, maybe, and like, Native Lager, maybe. Like there was very few small craft brewery, and the distribution was bad. You couldn't get Dogfish or anything like that out there.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so on tour with the band, we found like Victory Golden Monkey, Three Philosophers. Those are some of the first beers I found. And I started falling in love with that concept of like, what? There's craft beer? What is this? And we found Highlight on tour when we played in Tampa. We're like, oh, what is this Highlight IPA, tropical IPA from Cigar City? What is this? And we all fell in love with it. And then I took my wife out to dinner one day, and I saw a Dogfish Head beer rep at this restaurant that we were at. He was sitting at the bar. He had a little cooler. And I told my wife, I'm like, what is that? Like, what's he doing over there? And then she's like, I don't know, go ask. So I got up. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I work for Dogfish, and I'm trying to sell this restaurant. I'm trying to get a placement here. And I'm like, okay, so that's a job? Like
I had a similar moment.
I'm like, you're telling me that you can get paid for what you're doing right now? He's like, yeah. I'm like, how do I do that? And he gave me a card. I contacted him. I told my wife, I'm like, I want that guy's job. And crazy enough, and I'm not making this up, I know it sounds crazy, I got his job. I got his route.
Really?
When I finally made my way into distribution, I took over for him.
That's great. You worked for Dogfish Head or for the distributor?
It was a distributor. So he was wearing the Dogfish work shirt, but he was he was a distributor. He wasn't working for Dogfish directly. I ended up taking his route. And but it all started through like volunteering at beer festivals. Like I called that number he gave me. I met one of the distribution guys. They're like, hey, we're doing this beer fest, small beer fest. We need hands. I'm like, all right, I'm in. Count me in. I'm drinking for free all day. Let's go. And hung out, did a couple of the beer festivals, and eventually they hired me. And then eventually doing work with them in the distribution, we started selling Cigar City, which I was like, oh, I remember this beer. I love this beer. I want to work for them. And I started doing these enormous Cigar City events in Florida.
Yeah.
We did one in World of Beer. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those. I don't know if they're even still around. But they used to have like 100 taps.
After the last year, yeah. I honestly don't know, but I have been to a few in my days.
Yeah, World of Beer was, it was fun. A lot of people hated on it, but I thought it was fun, man. There's 100 beers. You had a little passport where you can write down all the beers you had. So I had this massive event, 350-something people. It was like maximum capacity before the fire department shut it down. I brought Cuban food. I brought a cigar roller. I had people dancing salsa on stage. I was running around with my coffee maker making coffee for people. I'm like, what's up? It's Cuban Brewery, let's go. And the head brewer, Wayne, and some of their reps came to the event, and they were like, dude, this is incredible. What are you doing? I'm like, I want to work for you. Hire me, please. And then so they hired me, and then we just, it was like just rocket skates after that, going on Great American Beer Fest and Extreme Beer Fest and Craft Brewers Conference, and It was nuts, man. It was a crazy journey. That's what happened.
Like chances are that we have somehow crossed paths somewhere before, and maybe
I'm sure, man.
maybe didn't even know it. I love it. I had similar moments just realizing, wait a minute, this is a job. And then when you get to the point that you can be like just the life of the party like that, like just living a brewery to the utmost, and bringing the beer and the party to the people, it's a real privilege. And it really, when craft beer was still it's just more kind of like underground and unestablished, like it was a really exciting time to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I lived in LA just briefly after college. And I was there, man. I was into music. I was into acting. I wanted to be a performer and entertainer. And you can imagine how that goes when you land in LA for the first time.
I'm surprised. I'm glad you didn't end up homeless, man. That's all.
Homeless or worse.
Yeah.
What happened was, I felt like lost in the desert. Just kind of found my way to the beach, and I started volunteering at a little brew pub called Abigail in Hermosa Beach.
I know that place. I used to sell them beer.
Well, there.
Yeah.
And the head brewer, whose name was Brian Brewer, I started helping out on brew day, and he would be blasting like Meshuggah and Slayer.
Brian is
in the morning.
Homie, dude. That's my homie.
And he's at Hop Saint now.
Yeah, Hop Saint.
What a small world.
Yeah.
He kind of just introduced me to the idea of this is a thing, and you know what? Like, this can be your thing. This can be your world. And I went up and down the California coast. And no matter what the brewery was, I found metalheads somewhere in the cellar. It's the kind of music that just lends itself to this kind of work. But it's also like it's a culture of people that don't really, that couldn't or wouldn't work anywhere else, that just do not fit in a traditional like office environment, that aren't willing to like give their freedom and their identity and their time away to something that they don't believe in.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to New York, and I'm gonna see what I can do with this, because it's a less established industry there. And I had a series of odd jobs that initially led to working for like one brewery and another, and doing all the Cicerone stuff. And it gave me like a focus and a direction I didn't have anymore, or I didn't have at first, but also just like just a whole like community, man, the drinking culture, the drinking civilization,
dude,
that I'd never known before.
The bottle shares, dude. Some of the best times of my entire life have been at a bottle share after a beer festival in a random city with all of the brewers, dude. And I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but the parallels between the metal community and the beer community, it's insane. Like, you walk into GABF and it's like Ozfest. There's a wall full of shirts. Like just like Ozfest. You're like, oh, where's my favorite band? That one. Yeah, I'll have number 25, please. And it's all breweries. And they're all on the road. Like, I was on the road living out of a suitcase for so many years because it was just constant travel. And that's how metal is. Like, you're on the road, you're on tour, you're trying to sell this thing that you're super passionate about. So yeah, the parallels are there, man. And it makes perfect sense what you're doing. I mean, obviously I started the podcast because of that same concept. It wasn't all metal. Obviously rock and roll is a little more vague, but that's the same idea.
I think it's fair to say. I mean, we have endless debates over what is the most metal, who is metal and who is not, but it's all rooted in rock and roll, which is all rooted in blues, and it's all about kind of the same central message, all said and done, man.
Yeah.
So I'm not overly concerned with like, what is metal and what is not, but like in the world of beer, like I said, we remained committed to finding like the most metal beers out there, just in terms of quality, of attitude, of aesthetic. And there is so much crossover between these two worlds, because, if the brewers didn't literally like play in bands that for whatever reason, man, never worked out, it's still like it's their favorite kind of music that they're trying to incorporate into a parallel art form.
Oh, for sure, man. For sure. I mean, that was one of the things I loved about Cigar City as well. And I hate to keep bringing them on and like, blowing smoke up them, but like, you look at Cigar City and you don't really get the metal vibe, right? It's more of a, Tampa cigars. It's more of a traditional historical vibe that they're putting out. But Joey Redner you know, like within a week of him knowing him, he's like, I'm going to Dark Lord Day and I'm going to fucking crowd surf during Ghoul. I'm like, yes, yes, amazing. And like Justin Clark, who's like one of their higher up dudes, you know, also huge metalhead. He's the one that introduced me to Dave Whitty from Municipal Waste. He was like, hey man, Municipal Waste is playing in Miami. You know, bring him a couple cases of beer. I'm like, absolutely, absolutely, I'm doing that. So
most metal,
yeah. That's why they were all about doing that Kill Switch beer, because even though the traditional imagery of Cigar City is this historical Tampa thing, like Cubans and cigars, there is this deep root of metal, and it goes, and it's also because Tampa has a huge metal scene.
Fuck, Florida's a great metal state, man. I'm from Texas originally, and similar to kind of what you were saying, you know, there was definitely a healthy metal scene in Texas. There was not like a craft beer scene by the time I left there, like just an angry fucking teenager. But now I go back and there are more and more breweries. I mean, they're starting to release like Pantera beers down in Texas, you know, like this has exploded kind of everywhere once you look for it. And again, like if it's not a metal brewery, chances are pretty high there is a metalhead or there's a fan of like heavy music or rock and roll, like somewhere in the cellar, somewhere in the brew house. And I mean, to me, like that Cigar City represents that, and made the Kill Switch beer and made the Guar beer. I mean, that is fucking metal. That's awesome.
They also did Sam Black Church. I'm trying to think who else they've had a few metal beers, and I wanted to do more. Yeah. You know, my goal was to convince Joey to just have like a whole separate side label of just band beers that Cigar City does, but that never took off. I'm trying to find right now. Now you mentioned Pantera beer, I did see it like today.
Yeah, I think it's like Texas Ale Project.
Good Friends and a Bottle of Pills. Oh, no, okay, yeah, no, this is from California. Alosta Brewing Company is putting out Bad Friends and a Bottle of Pills. And it's got you probably can't see it, but it's the artwork from Pantera there, but yeah.
And I think they're in Southern California. Yeah. So again, it's just like the more you look, the more you find, and every state has an answer to it, which is incredible. So we, like when we began with the Six Most Metal Breweries, we thought if our business is the most metal, let's do everything in the context of 6. We'll do like 6 episodes per season. We'll do 6 most metal bars per episode. We will have like a custom 6-pack to wash it all down with. But at this point, we could just as easily get rid of the 6 and do the most metal breweries and hit the road and never come back, because there are so many out there. And there's so many we've talked to or worked with at one point or another. And, you know, Decibel magazine and Brutal Truth, their original column, was a huge inspiration for all this. And Decibel Metal and Beer Fest, which hopefully will return by end of year, but has happened in recent years prior to COVID. You know, it was this great meeting ground where like beer and metal collide and people come from all over the country to celebrate.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So
shout out
the more you look for it, the more is there.
Shout out to Decibel and for featuring our show on there. Good old Chris Dodge gave me a little feature with Vox and Hops as well. It was you know, I feel honored to be like, hey, I'm in a magazine, in a magazine of metal magazine that I love. So what are we doing? Deftones?
Let's do Deftones. Let's do Belching Beaver.
Belching Beaver.
You're immortal now, man. I mean, at least print is real. So
right,
I'm glad I'm Decibel. You can never die.
I'm glad I'm in print before print disappears. You know, because we're getting closer and closer to that reality where there's nothing printed anymore. But I made it. I went and ordered the magazine immediately because I'm like, I need to have this. Like, how do you not?
Yeah.
All right. So, Deftones. Obviously, you know, I'm gonna just go ahead and say it here on the podcast. My favorite band. Number 1 of all time.
Yeah.
They're still 20 years later putting out some of the best music I've ever heard. So shout out to the homies. I've been honored to become friendly with some of them and hang out at NAMM. And, you know, like last NAMM, I had one of those moments where you have to pinch yourself. That can only happen with beer, man. Like it's one of those things too. Like when you have that connection, you with craft beer and metal, you're like you said, you're the one that brings the party. You're like a rock star amongst rock stars. It's nuts, you know. So
it's a good feeling, yeah.
Yeah, like that's where rock and roll beer guy. Like, I was like, it's cheesy, but my friend called me that as a joke because he's like, you show up at every show with a bunch of beer. You're the rock and roll beer guy. I'm like, oh fuck,
yeah.
All right. But anyway,
makes sense, man.
Cheers to you. Thank you for sending me this. I love this beer. I mean, I had a 6-pack already in the fridge. So.
For real, yeah.
Cheers.
This was cheers.
The Phantom Bride by Belching Beaver, Deftones. One of their series of beers with Belching Beaver, right? They had like 5.
I think
5 or 6.
Is it Ohms or Ohms?
They have
Pale Ale
Ohms.
came out recently.
I have a can of it there, just empty because
Yeah.
I drank it. I also have an empty can of the White Pony that they did, but they did like Swerve City, which was a brown ale, I believe. I don't know if it's Swerve City they did a Pog beer, which is the passion fruit orange guava IPA. They did a brown ale. I don't know if that was Swerve City. But they did a Digital Bath hazy IPA. They've done a bunch, and it's nuts.
Yeah,
Chino legit loves hops.
I learned that. So talking to Belching Beaver throughout this process, like hearing how hands-on Chino was and how passionate about the beer, because a lot of bands, I mean, to be honest, like a lot of bands just kind of like license out their name and aren't necessarily involved in the beer making. Chino and Deftones were start to finish, and it shows in the final product, because I mean, to me, this, like, I'm still a sucker for West Coast IPA.
Mm-hmm.
I love the brilliant clarity of it in a world of hazy. I love the classic hop bitterness. I love the malt backbone, man. And to me, this is a flawless example of the style.
And this is
if
Citra,
this is
right?
to his taste, yeah. Citra, Amarillo. I think there's some classic hops as well as some modern American
Mosaic,
hops in here.
Simcoe.
Yeah. So much to love, man. So the fact that like Deftones were hands-on involved in this beer only frankly just made me want to dive deeper into their music. And I always like knew of Deftones and appreciated them, but I didn't really like know Deftones until now. And it's been so much fun exploring their music all over again in the context of the beer.
That's great, man. I mean, I'm jealous. I wish I could discover Deftones for the first time, because like I said, it's my favorite band, you know.
These moments are life and rare. These moments in life are rare. It's been one of the few things that's kept me sane and helped to get me through just fucking like quarantine and COVID and everything that everyone's been dealing with over the last year. So to have Deftones feel new again, there's nothing else like it.
Yeah. Shout out to Deftones also. I have if you can't see it, but that black box back there is the Deftones tequila.
How is that?
Delicious. They did it with Abre Ojos tequileria, whatever you want to call it. But they make tequila, and fantastic tequila. But this beer is become a staple, man. Like, this is my favorite. When I go to I go to shows in San Diego often with Adam D from Killswitch, and this is what we end up drinking, because this is what they're serving down there, because it's a San Diego brewery. So this is my concert beer, and I super chuggable. I love Citra. This is my favorite. Citra and Mosaic are my 2 favorite hops, I think.
Best of both worlds, man, because they have like the bittering quality I look for in IPA, as well as like all the essential oils and the imaginative qualities that people are looking for now.
The tropicalness, like the fruitiness, the juice
that
people are looking for. That juice aspect. Speaking of Citra, check this out. Oh, lights went out. Citra, check this out. Guayabera, Cigar City Guayabera, Citra Pale Ale. This is the first can ever. That's supposed to be me.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that's supposed to be me. This was another one of my creations at Cigar City. Thanks to Wayne Wombles. He had a beer called Hopped in the High Seas, which was an incredible project. I don't know if you were familiar with it.
Yeah.
They were hopping beers while they were shipping it from Puerto Rico from a separate brewery that they were brewing out there. So we got that recipe for that beer. That's a pale ale. And they were doing each part of each one that they would release was a different hop. So it was like Hopped on the High Seas, Citra, Hopped on the High Seas, Mosaic, Hopped on the High Seas, whatever. And we need to take that Hopped on the High Seas Citra, make it scale it up, make it easier to drink, and put more Citra in it. And we ended up with this.
So technically you didn't need to be immortalized in Decibel because you can say you have your face on a beer can.
Well, they rebranded immediately. Almost as soon as I left the brewery, but that wasn't on purpose. I'm not blaming them. I left right as Oscar Blues purchased Cigar City.
Okay.
Yeah. Once Oscar Blues purchased Cigar City, it was like a day after. Everybody was hitting me up, like texting me, "Is that why you left?" I'm like, "No, that's not why I left." That was just a weird coincidence. My wife got a job in LA and I left. But the can immediately got rebranded once they got purchased. So I have one of the very rare, very few cans that exist of Guayabera, Silver Award winner at Great American Beer Fest, by the way.
Wow. Most metal.
Most metal.
Most metal. So the Weiss job kind of led you to LA, and once you got there, deeper into the music scene? Is that what happened?
Well, what ended up happening was I went straight to beer. I mean, when we moved here, I used my resume to get a job in the beer industry. I went straight to Modern Times and worked with them for a bit. And then I worked I left Modern Times. I was butting heads with one of their managers because, I was like, "Hey man, I've been doing this for a long time. Stop treating me like a child." Like, you know what I mean? And it really got to me. So, the metalhead punk, it kind of just like, "Fuck you."
Yeah.
So I ended up leaving.
Sometimes there's nothing better than saying "fuck you," honestly.
Yeah, so I left there and joined a small independent brewery that was opening here in LA called Iron Triangle. But I wasn't aware of their bad reputation because I'm new to the city, And after I got the job, I had a bunch of people hit me up like, "Oh, why are you working there?" I'm like, "What? Why? What do you mean?"
For real.
Yeah, yep. And then I quickly realized too. By the way, and I can say all this stuff now because they don't exist. They shut down.
Oh, for real.
Yeah, they closed down. So I didn't hear any of this story, but this is a fun story for you. You might like this. So, I went to an account, right, and I was trying to sell them beer, and the guy's like, "Get the fuck out of here." I'm like, "Whoa, what? What do you mean?" I'm like, "I don't know you." He's like, "I don't like Iron Triangle Brewing, whatever." I'm like, "Well, tell me why not. I need to know because I'm working for them. Please tell me why not." And he explained that they had this party, their launch party, their grand opening party. They invited all of the local breweries to this party. Told them it was a bottle share. Everybody brought their best bottles, like people bringing Duck Duck Goose and, like good stuff. And the owner started gathering all these bottles and putting them in the cooler. And then people were like, "Oh, let me get a beer." And they were handing out Shock Top.
Oh.
And
wow.
Immediately,
promo.
The guy told me that. I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." And when somebody complained, like, "Hey man, I have a couple bottles of Pliny the Elder back there. Can you grab those for me? I brought them." And they're like, "Sorry man, those are gone."
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, really? He's like, "Yeah, they're gone." And then when they called out the owner to that, like, "Hey man, what's going on? Why are you serving us Shock Top after we brought, our own beers and stuff? And why can't we access our own beers?" He said, "It's a bottle share, playa."
Wow.
And
yeah,
when he so I was like, "Okay, that's really bad." And when I went back to the brewery, I talked to the head of sales. I'm like, "Hey man, what is this I'm hearing?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, we made t-shirts." And he pulls out a t-shirt that says hashtag "It's a bottle share, player." I'm like, I gotta really? Like, this is what I walked into? Are you kidding me, dude?
Yeah.
And
so
I left them, and immediately they like shortly after they closed down. It was just not a real brewery. It was a front.
Yeah. That is some of the fucking bro, frat boy, douchebag culture that just needs to get out of beer at large and craft beer in particular if it hasn't already, man. Don't be that guy at that bottle share.
Don't be
That's the model. That's the moral of the story. And you're right. I mean, beer buyers, bar managers, they're a sensitive breed and they never forget. So.
Yeah, dude. It was such a struggle, and I was just, I coming from where I did, where it was the bottle share culture was the thing, man. I have, I have some legendary photos from Florida, like Greg from Stone, Greg Cook, and 400 bottles behind us from this massive, amazing bottle share we did. Like, that's where I come from, and then you're doing this bullshit, and it completely soured my mood for craft beer and the whole scene as a whole in LA, and that's why I backed out. I was like, I'm good,
I see. I should mention, man, like I have a real soft spot for like the San Diego scene and Stone in particular, because when I was at Abigail and Hermosa, like Brian Brewer was from Stone, like he was trained at Stone and then went on to do his own thing, and it led me down to Stone, which is kind of like the beginning of this journey, like up and down the West Coast and then ultimately back east. So I know that like Stone, I mean, maybe they're having something of an identity crisis now, and they've got like 2 breweries to support at opposite ends of the country. Yeah. But I still have a lot of love and a lot of respect, because I think what Cigar City is to you, probably Stone represents to me, because it was that moment that I realized, like, this is a thing, man. Yeah. Like, this is part of a rebellion, a resistance, and a new culture that I want to be a part of. Yeah. And the gargoyle on the label and the hops in the bottle, like, I was really inspired by it.
The descriptors on the label, man. It was like, you're not going to like this beer. Your palate is shitty. You're an asshole. Yeah. Don't drink this beer. Like, yeah. I loved Stone, man. I was I'm still a big fan. I mean, they like you said, they're having an identity crisis. That's fine. It happens. But they are definitely one of the forefathers of metal beer, whether they know it or not,
I completely agree. Yeah. I think, I got a little bit of pushback on the most recent box of the Knotfest Beer Pit, because I wanted to include Stone, because I think they are a big part of this story. Yeah. And, some people will say, well, Stone is not metal anymore, and Greg's not as involved anymore, and the beer is available like everywhere now. But I think, I don't want to say it's as simple as like respect your elders, man, but you got to understand like how this all evolved, like where we are from, why we enjoy the beer we do. And Stone is a part of that story, just like Cigar City is a part of that story.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about rock and roll parallels, like, I mean, I got to meet, like I mentioned, I had him on the bottle share, but I got to meet Greg a few times during my time, because we were the main distributor for Stone in Florida when I was working in the distribution, and we would have these massive events that he would come out to. And I mean, I have my Arrogant Bastard work shirt, my original Stone Arrogant Bastard work shirt, and it's signed by Greg. And it's like that's rock and roll metal bullshit, like memorabilia. You go to the show, like, please sign my shirt, like that kind of thing. So that it's the same exact vibe, man. Like, I respected Greg with the highest regard, because he was, one of the original rebels, and one of the few that hasn't sold out that I know of.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, much agreed. Yeah. For a company like the scale of which they're operating on, like, to remain independent, and maybe that is part of like the problems they've had in recent years, but they're still flying the flag in their own way, and I still respect them. Yeah. And I was really confused, like, if their April Fool's prank was a prank, or if they're actually coming out with a hard seltzer or not, but they played it really well.
I hope it is April Fool's. I know, like, Stone Cold Steve Austin and the El Segundo Brewings pulled off a hard seltzer banana flavored Stone Cold thing. I'm like, that's no good.
Yeah. What else is happening in the LA beer scene now, just in terms of, I mean, metal, but just like quality and like a new wave of breweries that you feel like are really doing good work?
I mean, I got to be honest with you, man. The pandemic has really stopped that for me. Yeah. Like, here in LA anyway. I haven't really seen much movement. But right up until before the pandemic, I think there was some breweries, like, I want to give a shout out to Smog City. Smog City. Smog City's good. They're the ones they were in Torrance. They're actually very close to Monkish Brewing. So when I would go to Monkish, I would end up going to Smog City as well, because they made some really great West Coast IPAs and some really interesting barrel age stouts as well. But the thing going out here is Highland Park Brewing, which was one of the hype breweries, you know, they made really great beers, but ended up getting into some trouble with, you know, some stuff they posted, some cancel culture stuff that happened in that brewery. So their stock went down.
I'm intrigued, really. Damn.
There were some racist bartenders. You know, I didn't really look into it much. I was like, something's going on over there. I guess I just can't drink their beer anymore. That's where I'm at these days. I mean, I'm not even gonna try and defend these people I don't really know. But metal wise, I mean, there isn't much in LA, man. There isn't much. I would love to open up a metal themed brewery. So there was Phantom Carriage Brewing, which was in Carson, which is not too far from LA. And those guys were super metal. They were making these incredible sour beers. Everything was barrel aged, done proper, Belgian style. And you would go to the brewery. They had a movie theater. They were playing constant like horror films. And then if you're hanging out in the tap room, it's just constant metal blasting. They had coffins and skeletons, you know, like everywhere. It was amazing. My buddy Martin was the owner, and he ended up selling it, or selling his shares, really. And it was his baby. That was all his thought, you know, his process. Like, I did an event there when I was working with Modern Times. I did an event at Phantom Carriage where Modern Times took over their taps, even though they're their own brewery. I brought a bunch of kegs from Modern Times, and I brought my homie John Schnepp, another close friend that is not here anymore. John Schnepp, director of Metalocalypse from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Death Clock.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So we did this big Metalocalypse event where in the theater they played Metalocalypse. You know, John was there signing autographs. They had their walls are made of chalkboard, so they had like chalk art from horror movies and stuff. And then John ended up, you know, sketching a Nathan Explosion, which is apparently inspired by George Corpse Grinder. So all of that happened. So Phantom Carriage was my metal brewery in LA. And then once Martin sold it, or sold his shares and ended up opening up his own pizza shop in LA, or not, in Long Beach, that brewery kind of, like, I went after he sold it and they were playing hip hop, and I was like, I'm never coming back here. Goodbye, guys. Not because I hate hip hop, by the way. Love hip hop. Big fan. Yeah. Far Side, Outkast, whatever. It's the fact that the metal brewery is now like every other brewery. You know, that special thing is gone.
I think I see what you're saying. And in all fairness, when some of the original owners or founders, whatever the case may be, like
founders had
out, step back, you know, like, yeah, you know, it changes like the nature and the character of a place, you know, and like maybe Stone is going through some of that with Greg right now. You know, we can only speculate, man, but it's like, I don't know. It's going back to all like the beer geek and beer nerd stuff you were talking about, is because, you know, you talk about different breweries you've worked for since, but still clearly have a soft spot for Cigar City. And like, even though I know that they were kind of purchased by Oscar Blues, which is part of like a larger private equity group, man, like they still represent character. They still represent quality. And it's like, you know, aren't you going to go there kind of first and foremost before like the next hype brewery or the next brewery that you've never heard of just because you think someone else might not have heard of it, you know, and you got there first or something? Like, we really do need to still like respect and support these places.
What I hope happens, because I'm out of the industry and I'm not really paying attention that much, I just really hope that mentality that Cigar City had, that Stone had, of not just the metal aspect of things, but also the educational aspect of things. That's what we need. We don't need breweries pushing out, you know, these ridiculous, you know, smoothie beers that I can't. I'm fine, I'll drink it, it's fine, but that's not, you know, we need some, you know, you need to have some good lagers, you need to have some quality, don't forget where you come from mentality, and educate people on, you know, proper glassware, proper, you know, making sure the glass is beer clean, making sure, you know, your lines are clean, know how to clean some lines. These new breweries, I guarantee you their reps aren't going to bars like, hey man, your line's dirty, I could taste diacetyl. You know what I mean? I guarantee that's not happening.
education first and foremost. It's a pill best swallowed when it is fun and entertaining. And thankfully, because we're talking about beer, like it's easy to do that, man. But I completely agree. Like never lose sight of quality. A lot of like the pastry stouts and double IPAs and like smoothie IPAs and smoothie everything and lactose everything can like easily disguise that, and you can't even taste like what's right and what's wrong anymore.
Yeah.
On that note, we should have a Droid Theory for dessert, because like even though I love them for their like the dark side and the stouts, like we're gonna have a double IPA that includes lactose. And I think if this is what you're looking for, like if this is the flavor you want, like a Droid does deliver. So let's try it now.
Oh my God. Okay, so I read the side of the can says food, Sichuan beef noodle soup with pickled mustard greens. And for a second there, I thought that was what the beer is supposed to taste like. And I'm like, wait, what?
No. Yeah. Yeah.
No, but see, that's really cool, because I try to tell a lot of people about that was one of my fortes when working in beer, was that food pairings with beer are way more complex and better than wine. And also with cheese. Cheese and food pairings with beer are way more complex than these wine pairings that everybody goes to.
You know, maybe it's like, maybe it's preaching to the choir here, but I agree. I think beer is an infinitely more like diverse and complex beverage than people generally give it credit for. And like craft beer is obviously here to prove that. I mean, every beer here is the brainchild of Mark Osborne, the owner and founder of Droid Theory. Not only does he make the effort to do like food, cheese, and cigar pairing, but now they're putting music pairings on their labels.
That's
so
fantastic.
When we talk about beer being like extreme, like, you know, big, boozy, high alcohol, extreme flavors, like a Droid Theory does represent and own that category really well in the market.
Fantastic label, by the way. Like, fucking, that's the best right there.
He has just an arsenal of artists that he works with all over the world to bring these, like, you know, you saw in the KCBC beer as well. You know, I mean, I like beer that tells a story, and that kind of begins with their label art. And when you actually have artists and designers putting that level of thought into it,
look at that. You got that nice.
Becomes a whole other animal.
You got that nice orange juice haze.
So this is a hazy IPA.
Yeah.
And you can see it. But again, like for all my hate, I think there are some people who do it better than others. And I would put a Droid Theory at the top of the list.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, there are those that do it right. A Droid Theory, Monkish does it right, even though they all taste the same. That one beer tastes really good.
I don't think you owe Monkish an apology, man. We know how you really feel.
I love Monkish, man. I'm giving him shit. I bust balls. I also come from a pro wrestling background where everybody just ribs each other all the time. So, and I'm Cuban, which is like we're just constantly busting balls. So,
shit. Well, no wonder you mentioned the Steve Austin Skull Splitter IPA.
Broken Skull IPA, brother.
Broken Skull IPA.
They recently posted a job opportunity. Stone Cold Steve Austin is looking for an ambassador of badass to represent his beers in El Segundo and across the globe. And I'm not going to say I didn't apply.
Can you imagine having that on your business card?
Dude, that's an amazing.
That is your introduction.
By the way, that's something that craft breweries do really well too. I'll tell you straight up. My first beer job was Brown Distributing in Florida. We did all the craft beer in Florida. Yeah. My beer title, Beer Ninja.
Beer Ninja.
That was on my business card.
That's great.
You know what I mean? And then Cigar City, I was the El Lector, which translated to the storyteller. Modern times, my job title was beer wizard. Like, you know what I mean? Like the job positions, and they're not these corporate, like a sales associate. You know what I mean? Like you're fucking. Yeah. It's cool. So ambassador of badass sounds really good to me. It sounds like a good job to have on your resume, I think.
That's a great one. I've seen everything from like beer commander to beer chieftain.
Yeah,
man. It's
so I'm going to go ahead and tell Adriot that I agree with the Szechuan beef noodle soup, pickled mustard greens pairing for food. I would like to pair this also with some fish. I think it would bring the citrusy kind of, citrusy flavors would pop well with the fish as well. And that's something I used to, it's super nerdy and pretentious.
You're making me hungry though, really.
It's pretentious and all that, but like it's part of the Cicerone thing, like being able to understand how certain aspects of beer play with certain aspects of food, doing beer dinners and hanging out with chefs to like, hey man, let's drink this beer, let's try it out. Like, what do you think? I think this quad goes really well with lamb chops and or a lamb, some kind of lamb thing and sweet potato and like there are so many crazy notes that people don't take into an account, and I love if people were to look into that. Like,
much agreed. I think we have to give Garrett Oliver a shout because he literally wrote the book on beer and food, but I will put beer up against wine any day when it comes to food pairing.
Yeah.
And I think when you do that with a group and you see like who has the most fun with what dish, you realize again, beer, for the complexity and the variety and the diversity of flavor, has a lot more to bring to your table, to your recipes, to your dishes. I'm all for it.
But okay, so let's bring back the parallels of metal and beer.
Mm-hmm.
So here you are saying that beer has all this potential, but most people look down on beer. Most people look at beer and immediately think trash. Like when that was one of my biggest struggles, was going into like white tablecloth restaurants that are super fancy. They have their $7,000 wine bottles and shit, and trying to
always one of my favorite things to do.
And then I try to convince them, like, hey, want to try this?
Yeah.
They're always like, no, get out of here. But it's such a fight, right, to get craft beer appreciated by certain people as well as metal. Like, and people are like, oh, I love music. Music's my whole life. I'm like, do you listen to King Crimson? They're like, no, what is that? Like, like it's the best kind of music. It's progressive. It requires talent. Like, I think it's a parallel struggle, craft beer and metal, to try and get into, I guess, popular culture or the general populace, as hey, we're doing what you like, but we're doing it like more complex, and it's, I don't know.
Yeah. I agree, man. I mean, it makes me realize I have been really lucky in life, because when I started to kind of come of age as a teenager, like heavy music was at that moment like commercially viable and could reach me, kind of like on the tail end of 90s grunge and 90s like alternative. I still don't understand the term alternative, man. But and then like, when the Crow soundtrack came out, like all of that just changed my life. And in the same moment, a later moment, but like in the same spirit, I was able to discover craft beer when it was still kind of like fledgling and new and underground and exciting. But when you put all of this in perspective, like typically heavy music is not a part of like popular culture. It's not like accessible to people on a large scale. You have to look for it or have someone that's going to turn you on to it. And then with beer, I mean, it's easy to understand, since Prohibition, we have decades of industrial mass-produced lager or Pilsner, which gave it kind of like, not only a negative connotation, but a negative connotation like to canned beer itself. And then on the other end, and in recent days, something you and I have been like ranting about like old men, but it's like when you look at the sheer abundance of like smoothie IPA, pastry stouts, it's hard to take seriously. And the beer that's being produced in the middle of those two extremes is such a small part of the market. It is such a small part of market share that people don't understand like the depth of flavor, the depth of diversity, the depth of character that's available in like modern craft beer. So communicating that message, I think, is really important. I hope like anyone watching that makes it to the end of this is like at least curious, like to dig deeper and to find out more, because it is there once you dig past the surface.
Yeah, it's not just about let's get drunk, let's have a 12-pack of Natty Lights. Like it's you know what I mean? Like it's a whole different experience, and that's something that I've pride myself in bringing to people that aren't. One of the things I did a lot in Miami was Miami Brew Bus. So we would do this brewery thing where I would it was like a tour bus. I would be the tour guide. There was 30 people on a bus, and we would go visit Funky Bruda, Winwood Brewing, and another, like a third. It would vary, it would change up every week, but it was mostly like, hey, let me teach you about craft beer. I think it's important that you can enjoy what you're putting in your body, because everybody, they want to be health conscious, like, oh, I'm vegan, or I'm non-GMO, I'm organic only, or I'm raw.
Yeah.
Like, you should do that with your liquids too. Like, they don't think about that. They're like, oh yeah, I'm a Budweiser's fine. Let me get a whatever that is, like a Busch Light. Like, do you know that Busch Light is just runoff from Budweiser? Like, you're drinking garbage. Like, it's literal garbage. Whereas these companies are independently owned. They're putting their heart and soul into this production, which, I mean, I've been there. I've been there mashing where, like, I at Cigar City, they make you brew beer. So I was mashing Tocobaga in 120 degree weather in Tampa, Florida, with no AC, to the point where I passed out and then woke up in my hotel room shaking. I'm like, what is happening? Like, you were mashing and you died for a few seconds. Like, oh, okay, that's cool. Can we go drink? And let's go drink. And then, it's a different world. And I really hope that people give it a shot. I know it's got this weird stigma, like, it's trash, or, oh, you're an alcoholic. And it's like, it's not really about that. It's not. And I really appreciate what you are doing, bringing this attention to metal breweries, bringing, this box to people's houses so they can try new liquids. And the fact that you are an Advanced Cicerone makes that much better to me, because your shit. We started the conversation with, like, what's that good for? It's good for people like me going, your shit.
Yeah. I hope, again, I think it's the perfect storm. And as we continue to, like, perfect it box by box and month to month, I think the Knotfest Beer Pit is going to be, like, a highly curated selection of beers, highest quality selection of beers, and beers that you cannot find grouped together, like, in any given state or any given market otherwise. Yeah. And, that coupled with kind of 5B just bringing, like, their arsenal, their bands, bringing, like, the metal and the branding to it all. Like, there's no one else out there doing this. And if I can be a small part of traditional distribution, just falling and bringing, like, craft beer to the people directly to their door, I'm really, really proud of that. So I think it's just going to get better month to month. I think it's going to get fresher month to month. We're going to continue to tweak, like, the quantities, the pricing, but above all, like, we want to make it accessible. So, forget about waiting in line, forget about hype breweries, take a look at metal breweries and let us come to you. Like, let us share this world with you. That is the message.
Hell yeah, man. And hails to that, because that's the message to me. Yeah. I love it. I love it. And, I love that you're quality and freshness, forward thinking, because that's another aspect of, if you attract people like myself, where it's like, I care about the freshness of beer, because I know how it degrades. I know how, hops die out. So it's important to make sure you get fresh beer from new breweries that are supporting bands that maybe you're into. Maybe you're not into it, totally. But it's still something that's independent. It's American. It's the most American thing,
There is a patriotism in all this. Yeah. I mean, it's an industry that you cannot outsource, that you cannot send elsewhere. At the end of the day, like I said, it is like heavy machinery that requires a lot of labor and a lot of skill to, like, use and to execute. And I think, like, if anything, what beer has become is a return to, like, what it was in America before. Like, if you want it, you drive down the street, you walk down the street, you stay to your locality, you get it. You explore, like, the best beer that's available to you in that moment. What we are trying to do is take beers from all over the country that, like I said, wouldn't normally be available in that respect, and deliver them to people like DTC, DIY firsthand.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to introduce, like, hopefully it's going to introduce people to a whole lot of breweries that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, and it eliminates the something that's one of my pet peeves, which it's a pet peeve, but I still acclimate to it. But, I have friends all the time that they hit me up. They're like, hey, man, send me that Deftones beer. It's not available in Miami. Like, well, hey man,
So
sign up to the box. Let's go.
Belching Beaver is a like phenomenal example, because being from New York, like we don't get Belching Beaver there. I don't think you really necessarily get it like east anywhere, man. So being able to access it and send it there was great, because I had never had this beer before. And like I said, it made me want to dig that much deeper into Deftones, like knowing their involvement in it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic project, a fantastic idea. I'm jealous. I wish I was a part of it. I wish. Yeah, I mean,
you are now.
Now
right?
I am.
You are now.
Now I am. But it's one of those. You and maybe you can relate to this. But like even with metal songs, I don't know if you're in music. You've done music. You've written music, right?
So, lifelong guitar player, but I mean, this is another thing worth mentioning, man, because I never really played in a band. I never really got to express myself that way, and I was looking for an outlet for it. And my partners in beer and metal, in the Six Most Metal Breweries, in our short webisodes, That's Metal, in our first project, Beer Like and Das Movie, about green beer turning people into green zombies. My partners, Derek and Jeremy, if we met in our 20s, we probably would have started a fucking band. We met in our 30s, so we just became full-time professional alcoholics and started releasing these projects, man. So it is an expression of that same drive, like to create, like not just to interpret, but like to create music, to create art, to create something to share with an audience.
Oh yeah, if you go to the website, the sixmostmetalbreweries.com, there's a link that says meet the band.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So we're living out that fantasy, and we are living vicariously.
Yeah, man, that's one of the things, like you want this kind of representation, and I think you guys are killing it, man. And I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you reaching out to me, sending me the beers, and getting this going. And I don't think this will be the first time, or I'm sorry, I don't think this will be the last time that you and I talk. So
no way. It's like I said, there's more and more crossover once you look for it, like state to state, across the nation and across the world. But metal and craft beer, like these are very small worlds with a lot of crossover, and everyone kind of knows everyone. It's easy to connect once you identify like that shared passion between the two.
Now, for Knotfest, I know that they used to be a U.S. tour. And in the last year or so, before the pandemic, they were doing like the 1 day, 2 day thing just in California. With the return of concerts and everybody getting out of quarantine, is this something that we're going to see back again in all of the states? And is the plan to have like a tent at Knotfest for Six Metal Breweries? Yeah.
So I mean, the goal, the dream with Knotfest, the beer pit, is that it literally becomes a beer pit, a tent, like on site at Knotfest, and not just like a box delivered to your door. We're already seeing signs of live music coming back. I think we have a roaring 20s ahead. People, I hope, are like getting vaccinated because they want to get social again, man. They need that kind of interaction, that kind of release after a year at home. So, Knotfest, I think, is going to come back in California. I think it's going to come back in Iowa, of course. Those are Slipknot's originally stomping grounds. I think it's going to come back to like Brazil. I think it's going to go international. And the hope is that if you've been to like festivals like prior to the pandemic, you started to notice more and more there was something like a separate craft beer bar, a separate craft beer garden, a separate craft beer tent. I would love to do that, like by region, by country, and bring just like a host of metal breweries to it. So that would be the dream. And then we fucking film it start to finish. And maybe we just like recreate heavy metal parking lot in the process. A bunch of drunk people out in the parking lot.
That's the thing, man. Every show. Well, I did speaking of Deftones, since they're one of the featured bands collaborations right now, I brought out my Cigar City tent when I was still there, popped it up in the parking lot for a Deftones show, and just had kegs of beer and people coming over. That's the vibe, That's the parking lot party. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. I love it. I'm all about it. I want to be more part of it. I think everybody should be excited about this. I think as we return back to reality, and yes, get your vaccines. I don't care what conspiracy theory you read online. I'm going tomorrow to get my second shot to get this out of the way so I can go back to shows. Whether you believe in it or not, you're going to need one to go back to shows. So just get one. Yeah. Just fuck it.
That is the carrot on the end of the stick.
Yeah.
I'm getting mine this weekend. Like I said, I want to get back to life. I want to get back to shows. I want to get back to like beer. I want to get back to traveling, man.
Yeah.
I just want to get back to the world.
Yeah.
So, fuck, get the vaccine so we can eventually take the masks off and get back to business and get back to metal.
Hell yeah, man.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. I was watching a live stream from one of the bands that I enjoy. I think it was Tesseract. And I started tearing up because I'm like, what if I never come back? What if I can never see them live again? We need to get back to it. I need that in my life. Yeah. And so do all metalheads, and so does everybody, in my perspective. So
it's coming. It's been a hard year, but I'm optimistic for 2021, and I'm optimistic for the decade ahead.
For sure, brother. Well, hey, thank you for sending me the box. Thank you for doing the podcast. I want to do this again. Let's, we'll talk again. We'll stay in touch. We'll do other boxes and talk about them. But where do people find you? How do people sign up for this box?
Oh, so Eddie, I'm going to say keep it metal. Thank you so very much. For the beer pit, just go to knotfestbeerpit.com. It is month to month. You can sign up for the box there. Follow Knotfest at Knotfest on all social media channels, and it will help guide the way. So I would encourage you to join us in the pit. For me, follow us at Six Most Metal Breweries. You can check out the6mostmetalbreweries.com to watch our pilot episode. You can watch our short webisodes, That's Metal, which includes beer parodies of The Crow and The Matrix, which I guarantee you have never seen anything like it before. So if nothing else, I would just encourage you to join us in the pit, join us in the Six Most Metal Breweries, help us bring this world to life and live it completely. And that is what is coming in the year ahead. So get your shot, and I will see you on the road.
Hell yeah, and you'll find me in that pit, brothers. Come and find me in that metal beer pit. I'm going to always be there until the day I die. So thank you, Adam, for the time. Thanks for sending me the beers. We'll be in touch, brother.
Cheers, Eddie.
Cheers,
Thank
man.
you.
Stay metal.